Hello and welcome to Dystopian Fiction Has Been Moved to Current Affairs. This is, drum roll please, episode 40. Very nice. Episode 40, 40 episodes. It's so extraordinary.
Woohoo.
And we're going to be talking about flow, which I'm just so excited that this is our 40th episode because this film, if people have not seen it, like this will just, it will break your heart. It will make you
Yeah,
so happy. It will inspire you. It will make you go and get a cat immediately from the
yeah.
animal sanctuary.
Surprising
Uh,
hit with Claire. I didn't think it
yeah,
was
no,
Claire.
no, I'm just
This is a
like,
Marsha
I'm just
suggestion,
like,
and then
yeah, I know.
it
I'm
really.
obsessed. Yeah,
No, it is fantastic. Won an Oscar,
it did.
much
Yes,
deserved.
yes.
But
Uh,
deeply lauded and praised.
mhm.
Again as deserved. So
Indeed,
go see it
yeah,
if you
yeah,
haven't yet.
do. So you can get it on Amazon on Mubi, and it's Latvian and it's from 2024. And I am now going to give Marsha the unenviable task of trying to tell you what it's about, which, to be honest, you should just stop now, pause, go and watch it. It's only about like
It's
85
only
minutes.
80 minutes long.
Yeah,
Yeah, literally, you'll speed
come
through it.
back because it's not really going to be justice done to it in a
Yeah,
summary.
it's also yeah quite hard to really describe what happens. I think you kind of need to see it for yourself. So, but I will try all the same. Flow is about a ragtag group of animals, sort of interspecies relation of animals that are displaced by an apocalyptic flood, where they sort of all end up clambering onto this shared boat and I guess sort of take a passive exploration of their world on this boat, and they sort of drift along through these various environments such as flooded woodlands and vast oceans and sort of like Venice-like abandoned cities.
Mm.
Um, and sort of we see the development and growth of these animals. I guess it's a very impressive. It's a no dialogue film, but at the
Mm.
same time, we still they each animal just have quite like a distinguishable personality,
Yeah.
and quite like recognizable
Mm.
emotions just through their faces and the noises that they make. We
Mm.
sort of see them build bonds and have disagreements and friendships, and there's
Yeah.
even some death, heartbreaking
This is true.
moments,
Yes,
and yet
yes.
quite spiritual.
Before you show this to your children, do be aware that there is a sort of Bambi's
Yeah.
mother type moment in it. And also, I was extremely stressed throughout for the
Yes.
survival of the cat. Even though I knew it probably would survive, I was just like everything they did was just, oh, it was
Yeah.
very stressful.
There's
So,
some quite, some natural, well, unnatural in the sense that they're animals, but like natural in the sense that they're all quite talented at
mm,
steering a boat and using a rudder. That was quite
it's true.
impressive.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of everything, a little bit of something for everyone there, you know.
Mm,
So I say, go watch it for yourself because it's very beautiful, and I
it
also
is.
just
Yeah.
the like animation and the sort of textures that they have
Yeah.
is so beautiful. It's kind of a
Yeah.
reminiscent of some like video games I feel like I've seen
Yeah.
before.
So the team that created it, who are Latvian, or Latvian, French, and Belgian, I think it's a co-production, but sort of Latvian origin of the idea, and it was like 5.5 years to create the animation, and they did it all in Blender, which is like open source software, so you can all be inspired to go and
You can go
create.
make your own flow.
Yeah, exactly. But also, just like it's there were no storyboards, there's no like deleted scenes or anything. It just sort of like flows together as a whole, and it is so beautiful. And if you close your eyes,
Mm.
like the sounds, it's just like being in like nature. I mean, it's it's like a spa
Yeah.
experience, but with added
Yeah.
animated
Yeah.
animals.
I
Yeah.
think like definitely the lack of dialogue also really kind of gives the, I guess like the sound and the score of the film quite a lot
Mm.
of space to breathe. And
Yeah.
sort of like I think you kind of like zone a little bit more like I guess the
Yeah.
animal noise of like the squeals and the barks
Yeah.
and the
Mm.
squawks, as well as kind of like just also the like nature sounds. And I
Yeah.
think
Like rustling and the water and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, which I think
Mm.
is is nice because I feel like we all kind of live in a very like fast paced, very like
Mm.
well, I live in a city, not everyone does, but I don't know. Obviously, watching flow doesn't replace the real thing of nature, but I guess it
Mm.
kind of acts as something that invites you to
Yeah.
step outside, experience it for yourself, and also enjoy it whilst it lasts. Because I guess that's at the end of the day sort of what the film's about:
Yeah.
natural disasters and unnatural
Mm.
disasters. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose it's just worth sort of saying at this introductory point that one of the issues, I guess, with a film that doesn't have a dialogue and doesn't even necessarily have the most clearly defined narrative,
Hmm.
insofar as it, I guess we were saying it's like often described as a journey, but that suggests there's a destination in mind. This is much more
Yes.
that they are subject to the things that happen to them rather than particularly. There are a few moments
Yeah.
where their directive, as Marsha pointed out, they learn to steer the boat, but mostly things happen to
Yes.
them. And so when we talk about this, we're going to be applying meaning to it in a way that I guess is much more rooted in our experience as viewers
Mm.
than some of our discussions where we can more clearly sort of draw together like the viewing experience with the professed message of the dialogue and
Yes.
narrative of the film. So you don't have to agree with everything that we say. I mean, you never have to agree with everything we say, but obviously we are full of wisdom and sagacity, so you probably should.
We were sort of saying like, are we trying to? I guess obviously as viewers who are humans, like we're trying to like
Mm,
subscribe like human values to it. But also at the end of the day, the I feel like the portrayal of the animals in Flow definitely would not align with what would happen in the real world. So
mm,
ultimately, I feel like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess a lot of people out there saying how like there's like a lack of anthropomorphization, but I think
mm,
like Claire pointed out that they are slightly anthropomorphized, even if they're not necessarily walking on two legs and
mm.
talking in a
Yeah.
human language.
And
But
maybe
yeah,
it's
I don't
something
know.
about saying, actually, well, in a world, in a post-human world, or a world where these animals are not going to be saved by human intervention, the cat is, we presume, a pet at the start, but without humans, they become self-sufficient, and part of the arc of the story is the growth of that self-sufficiency. And of course, there are intelligent animals who might well be able to realize that actually pushing a rudder this way or a rudder that way would make a difference. We know, think of all the things that you can train a professionally trained guide dog to do or something.
Mhm.
It's not
No,
impossible.
exactly.
I'm not sure whether we should ascribe such intelligence to your average capybara, but maybe. But there's a sort of element of saying it's not. Yeah, it's not quite like they start doing all the things that humans did, but they start, I guess,
Yes.
becoming sort of more resourceful as the film progresses. We should probably start with the setting then. You mentioned that it's kind of like an apocalyptic flood scenario. And Marsha's done
Yes,
some research on this, so I'm going to
I
pass
did do a
over
little bit of
where I
research.
just sort of waffle on.
I guess are we talking more about like setting as well, like geographically? I
Oh,
guess
well, let's start with that because I think one
yeah.
of the
I
questions that
think
you sort of ask as a viewer is like, where are we?
where are we? The general setting in the film seems kind of nondescript. There's just some sort
Mm,
of there's some woodlandy areas that
mhm,
could be I wouldn't say necessarily tropical nor particularly I don't know. And then there's just like kind of more widespreading fields, and then now obviously
mm,
that kind of all gets covered by water. So we don't really know where we are. But I guess that's also mixed up by the fact that our little ragtag group consists of a capybara, which is from South America, they're endemic to South America, a lemur, endemic to Madagascar, golden retriever, just sort of your average Joe. They're probably found everywhere, but I don't know where they're endemic to. And obviously a black cat and a secretary bird, which are from Africa.
mm.
So yeah, I guess it's kind of like there's no descript place that this could be because we have all of
Mm.
these kind of different animals from all over the place. Maybe they all escaped from the same zoo. We don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah, I guess it kind of makes it like a universal kind of setting.
Yeah, I think
Um
that's right. And I wondered whether, so that the house that we see right at the
mm,
start has I guess, some hallmarks of traditional Central and Eastern European housing. So,
Hmm.
sort of picks up some of those traditions that we might recognize that perhaps make us think of kind of the Latvian origins of the film, for example. Not typically British, I would say. It feels a bit almost like, I don't know, might make me think of Scandinavia. I don't know enough about sort of
Yeah.
traditional architecture, but there's something kind of quite European about it. But then once the journey moves, as you say, we encounter dogs. Well, that's sort of again very sort of makes us think of the traditional Western pets. But then we move from that European into tragically, certainly in the UK, it's very difficult to get a license to keep a capybara as a pet. It is easier in some other countries like America. I know this because obviously I would have one if it was easy. But but yeah, so we're sort of immediately taken into a different environment. And then, yeah, obviously the lemur being uniquely Madagascan, that's a very specific regional illusion, whereas the cat is universal creature in different ways. So there's things that I think being
Yes.
done there that suggest that there is, I guess, this affects everybody, but how those different animals respond and how they are differently, I guess, affected by the flood coming
Mm.
does vary among them, because obviously there's a lot of imagery of the boat and the storm and so on. It made me think of when people say, "Oh, we're all in the same boat," and there's the sort of response, "We're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat." Like some people get into that boat and can survive in it. Others, we see
Yeah.
the other lemurs in their finer boat. We see the dogs lacking in a boat. Um, the ability of the secretary birds simply to fly and escape that way, the animals that can swim, surviving differently.
The
So
different, I guess, yeah, abilities to adapt to.
yeah, and then that's flipped on its head at the very end, which we will talk about towards the end of our
Yeah.
episode, I suspect.
But yeah, I guess the central problem that they face is the flooding.
Mm,
So we're not necessarily told where this flood is from or why it happens, but I think just based off the timing of the release of the film and the hot topics, especially in politics
mm,
right now, is like I think we can kind of conclude. I definitely felt it was like a climate change allegory
mm.
and
Yeah.
how that's going to happen. So obviously we have sea levels that are rising due to climate change. So I have a couple of statistics to share. One source that I saw said that the average sea levels have increased over 8 inches since 1880, with with 3 of those inches having risen in the last 25 years, which
Mm,
is quite insane. And levels will accelerate over time to predicted to rise by a whole foot by 2050.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, there's a lot more. Again, kind of going back to Claire's allegory. We're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Obviously, they're going to be more vulnerable
mm,
populations than others, especially people who live at low sea level. Will be experiencing much more frequent damaging floods than others. Well, for example, in the US, people living in the east and Gulf coasts will be experiencing damaging flooding 10 times more frequently in 2050 than today. And obviously, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds will be
mm,
disproportionately affected as well. And to maybe go back to a little bit more of the science, why is climate change causing sea levels to rise? Is we've got melting glaciers. So obviously, as temperatures rise globally, that causes ice to melt and obviously collect up in our seas, causing the levels to rise. There's also kind of following on from that loss of the Greenland and Antarctica ice sheets,
mm,
sort of like the big spanning sort of snow and ice that cover these lands is also slowly. You can sort of looking up pictures of this over the last couple like decades is
mm,
actually quite scary. Thermal expansion, which is the phenomenon of as temperatures rise, water also heats up and expands due to the nature of like the chemical bonds in the water, and that takes up an increasing volume. And finally, we have a bit of like a positive feedback where, as seas warm, this also drives sea levels higher
mm.
and causes more melting and more thermal
Yeah.
expansion, and it all kind of like comes back in on itself. So,
Mm.
yes, this our maybe our reality isn't too far from what we see in Flow, although maybe
Mm.
not as sudden. There probably won't be some like huge tsunami kind of looking scenario.
I mean, I guess that we can compare it with. obviously the effect of rising sea levels and the way in which we've seen, the complete wiping out of existing islands in the
Mm.
last 50, 75 years. I think it's like 5 of the Solomon Islands. And then there's questions about, what's happening to places like Tuvalu, and
I think like
usually,
St. Lucia as well, which is like a
yeah,
whole
yeah.
nation. It's
So,
like
like, yeah, exactly. So places usually that have, as you mentioned, tend to be disproportionately affected by carbon emission driven climate change that they didn't
Mhm.
bring about. So um, this issue, I guess, with the fairness and the way in which reparations are paid, and the balancing out in order to stop these things. Certainly, we're talking about major contributors to the Western economy in terms of labour, like Bangladesh, for example, is a place that
Mm.
again is very low in terms of sea levels, and will undoubtedly be disproportionately hit. But then there's also, I was thinking, we're recording this in the very recent wake of the hurricane damage to Jamaica. So, although it's not depicted as a storm that causes the sudden flood, I guess that there is that kind of flooding as well, where you get more extreme weather conditions, a rising number of
Yes.
storms
And
and
that's like
hurricanes.
because of the differences in like I guess the sort of like airflow over the oceans also
Mm,
changes as we have like
yeah,
warming temperatures and
yeah,
rising sea levels, and that
yeah.
will cause like the weather patterns to change and more
Mm,
severe storms to come along as
mm.
well. So that will also be a lot more frequent.
And obviously, I think one of the interesting things is that we often are quite anthropocentric in the way in which we consider the impact of the climate crisis, but it is not merely humans that are being affected by such things. We see as a consequence both of the behaviours that bring about extreme climate and weather events and exacerbate flooding and things like that. For example, the stripping of natural territories that prevent, against flooding, like woodland and things like that. So changing the nature of those environments, impacts on the fauna and the flora. But I'm thinking particularly about animals that live there. And you were talking about melting
Yes.
ice caps. I saw a really terrible article by a wildlife photographer working in the Arctic and saying that he's recently seen 2 polar bears who have starved to death. And so this
Oh my
is,
God.
we knew that this was happening, but just the idea that with the less access to solid ice flow, we're seeing more and more polar bears starve and drown because of the impact on the food chain that they rely on. So sometimes I think looking at it like even if we're thinking mostly of these animals as kind of symbolic of different kind of human groups, we might also just want to think about them as animals as well.
As also just animals, yeah, which
Mm,
I think is like again
yeah.
like removing the yeah, and I think that it's also like removing the human
Mm,
like the human centering, like having no humans, even despite there being some architecture left behind and
mm.
like a very little bit of very little anthropomorphization. It's quite
Good.
big. I think yeah, it like changes the narrative onto
Mm,
like what I feel like is less focused on when thinking of how climate change is going to affect our planet, which is like
yeah.
animals and plants.
It's interesting the way in which we see the legacy of humanity because we get this sort of domestic scene, the home in which the cat lives, where it's implied that the owner, the human who lived there, I think was a sculptor, a creator of statues, including statues of the cat
Yeah, he's
in
like I think the
varying
cat is almost
sizes.
the muse in
Yeah.
this
Mm.
yeah, in this
Yeah.
this human that we didn't see, but
Yeah, and we see kind of quite recent sort of legacy of human presence. There's sketches, and the bed is unmade, but it is still clean and not rotted or anything like that. It's not a ruinous situation. The window is broken, I think. That's how the cat's getting in and out. But
Mhm.
beyond that, it's not a scene of devastation. So that's sort of where we start thinking about humanity, like as recently there, but now gone.
Like recent signs that they could have been is kind of again that same in
Mm.
the same storm but not in the same boat. It's like was
Yeah.
there like an evacuation that meant
Yeah. Yeah.
all animals had to be left behind
Yeah.
whilst
Yeah, which is obviously what often happens in evacuation
yeah.
scenarios. Yeah. No, I think that's a very fair point. On the other hand, what we also see is that the there's something like, I guess if we're seeing the animals as symbolic also of kind of their human counterparts, then it's interesting that, so we usually think of sculptors for most major sculptural works. I mean, plenty of people who sculpt animals, but the monument is made by human for human. Yes, so
Yeah.
putting up a statue to whichever person sculpted in their likeness. What we see instead is that an absent sculptor, whose house is now inhabited by the cat, has sculpted cats. And we actually don't see very many In fact, I think we only see one sculpture of a human. There is a scene where there's a hand and a face of a human sculpture rising up above the water. But I don't know, there's something about human legacy, our tendency to put up statues in our honor, or I guess a cat to put up a statue in the honor of a cat, which is wiped away, I guess, by the unforgiving nature of the flood. And whilst it helps the cat a bit because he's able to climb right up to the top of the ear of the cat statue, it doesn't last for very
Yeah.
long.
I guess, yeah, I guess our need to like erect statues like that is to commemorate something into the like far future. But
Mm.
obviously in the face of like a kind of apocalyptic like
Yeah.
natural disasters, that doesn't really mean much and it won't really like survive the impact.
It made me think of the poem that everybody always refers to at this moment, which is Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. The idea of, I guess that's really thinking about empire and the idea of kind of like the shattered, broken statue with the inscription of "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair," and yet the works, not being there anymore. There was something I felt about that with these kind of like sculptures that were meaningless in the face of you can put up legacies as much as you like, but unless you maintain the world around them to remember them, then they function with no purpose. Which maybe is a kind of reflection on capitalism and the idea of building up wealth and treasure of a purely material sort that doesn't contribute to the living on of people and the natural world. It questions that, I guess. What use is any of that in the face of the disaster? And we can maybe talk about the lemur in a minute with respect to that as well, because the lemur, they're very keen on gathering stuff.
On the material
Yeah, the
focus.
material, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, as we said, there's a lot of fluidity to this imagery, and you can kind of, ascribe some meaning to it, or it might spark some thoughts, but I'm not sure that it is any one single representation. The architecture, too, is interesting because, on the one hand, like the giant ruined architecture, you mentioned that there's like a Venice feeling to it, and I think that's true because of the kind of like canals moving among the buildings.
Yes,
There is also some like
kind of ancient like
ancient, I mean, some of it seems South American and some of it seemed more like
yeah.
Tibetan or I guess kind of like Asian, in again drawing, I guess, on a number of different visual traditions, perhaps.
Mhm.
But it was all very like bare, like when what they're looking for couldn't be served by like landing on any of these places, because actually they're what's the word, just like lacking, yeah, like lacking in resources. All they are is kind of like bare stone.
No, not much of a like habitable space, I guess,
Yeah.
for the visitors, the explorers, our animal group.
So should we talk about our animals then? Let's start with our
Yes.
lovely cat. So I guess the central character is the cat.
Hmm.
I think on Wikipedia it said it was like a dark grey cat, but this is a black cat.
Ah,
Yes,
it's a black
it's a
cat.
black
We're
cat.
not going into this sort of bit dark, bit
No,
grey,
I
bit
think it's
no,
important that
this is
we
a
remember
black
it's a
cat.
black cat, because black cats are
Yes.
famously
Feared,
feared,
misunderstood.
exactly, superstitions. They are
Yeah.
under adopted, so this is why I
Oh,
said go and adopt yourself
breaks
a
my
black
heart.
cat. We may want to contrast them later on with a white secretary bird as well, because I think that there could be a kind of like othering racial message there. But yeah, the cat all on its own, the way that cats tend to be. I have two cats. They tolerate one another. They are brothers. They eat next to each other, but they're not really like they don't care very much about anything,
Oh,
including each other. So you were talking about the way we see personality in the animals. What was your feeling about like the personality of the cat to start
yeah,
with?
a bit of sort of a solo, sort of loner character, but quite curious.
Hmm.
I'd say. I feel like the cat goes through a lot of like development. Also, the number of times this cat got thrown overboard with no consequences, I want to point out there was unreal. There was a lot of I feel a little bit of plot armor there.
Nine lives, I guess. The
Yeah,
old
that's
cat
true.
had, you
That
know.
is true.
You are right
Um,
that I think that cats, which of course, have famously good balance and land on their feet and things like that, slightly unfortunate when you're landing on your feet, but there's water underneath.
yeah.
And I guess cats don't like swimming, but they can swim, and some wild cats obviously do swim voluntarily. My cats not so
Not
keen
so much.
on the
Yeah.
idea of being put in the bath, thank you. But yeah, they can swim and they can become more resourceful, and I guess that's what the cat does. But yeah, the cat does have quite bad luck in terms of falling in, but quite good luck in terms of being saved by passing
Yes,
trees
indeed.
or by the whale or whatever. Lucky cats.
Yeah, I guess like in a sense, like the kind of repeated number of times the cat is saved and helped by other characters, it like is part of its like I guess progress to kind
Mm,
of like forming trust and
yeah,
like reliance. And I guess that's like the cat's overall arc is from being alone to
yeah,
I guess gaining a sort of like camaraderie
mm,
with these other animals
yeah.
and ending up in a little bit of its own pack.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I mean, I think anybody who like owns animals or watches lots of animal videos will be familiar with kind of the mannerisms and behaviors typical of domestic cats. So one of the things that we really see is that, the cat does react the way that cats do to things that are new and unusual, particularly cats that I think are more fearful. So one of
Yes.
my cats is much more likely to like meow or hiss or smack passing dogs, for example, my dog passing by, even though they know each other, just always that little bit like vulnerable and protecting himself in advance. And that's what we see. The cat hisses at the capybara, the cat hisses at the Labrador retriever that's falling when it comes onto the tree with it. These are natural cat
We got that,
behaviors.
like, black cat golden retriever duo. In fact, I think
Nice.
a little bit of
Yes,
a
that's
trope.
right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. There's kind of natural cat behavior, but as you say, I
mm,
guess part of the sort of the cat becomes more confident in itself. We see at the beginning that like to get the fish, it basically waits for the dogs to drop it. That
yes.
goes all wrong because it's like it has to run away, and then it doesn't know whether to accept the fish from the secretary bird, and then eventually it realizes, oh, not only can it catch fish for itself,
For
but it can also catch fish for other people.
others, yeah.
Yeah, because we should say that this water is not like I guess we often think of flood
Like
water. This is
gross,
beautiful. Yeah,
mucky.
exactly.
Yeah, this is
Beautiful,
crystal
clean.
clear.
Yeah, with tropical
Yeah,
fish.
full of
Um,
life. Yeah.
yeah. So with no gory fish death at all. It's all very like clinical. Get the fish, eat the fish.
Yes.
So, and I think that the cat also like seems to grow in its both its care for its friends, its sort of empathy, but also how it like applies its resourcefulness to helping the others rather than just saving itself.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other animals are pretty patient with the cats, I think, because
Yeah.
it's capybara's there in the boat, perfectly happy, and then the cat turns up and is all like hissy and nasty, and
I think
capybara's
the
just like,
capybara was like the perfect choice. Like I feel like there's that kind of pop culture conception that I don't even think it is a pop culture. I think it is real that capybaras are very like friendly, like
yeah,
interspecies.
yeah,
Um, I don't know, hang out in the interspecies group.
they seem to be, yeah,
So I was like,
yeah,
of course, the owner of the boat or the
yeah,
inhabitant of the boat is going to be a
yeah,
capybara that like
yeah.
welcomes in any lost straggler.
Yeah. And the cat obviously also encounters quite a number of threats. It's quite a small cat, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is
And the dog pack is one of the, apart from the water and the arrival of the water and the deer running past and so on, one of the first threats the cat repeatedly encounters is the dog pack. So I thought that, as you said, there's like the kind of pairing of the black cat and the blonde dog, as it were.
Mhm.
But the dog is in fact one of five. Are there five dogs in total? I think
Yes,
that's right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So the dogs are obviously like, I don't know, I'm a big dog fan, but I feel that like we see the worst of dogs
We
here.
do, which I think is a fair representation because I feel like
Mhm.
cats get all the unfair, like sort of directed hate.
It
And I
is
feel like,
true.
we need a balanced perspective, and I really
Mm.
think Flo gives this. It's sort of, yeah, like the golden retriever Labrador is like, I guess his kind of arc is like breaking out of the group mentality of the dog pack. Even though they're a team, yeah, they are kind
Mm.
of like self-involved
Yeah,
and
they don't
um
like they do stuff together, but they don't do stuff for each other. So they're like
no,
sort of snatching food from each other. They don't
yeah,
like share that sort of thing. Yeah.
get caught up in like sort of trivial like things,
Mhm.
sort of like chasing rabbits and
Mhm.
cats.
And I feel they sort of, for me, I guess they're the kind of group of slightly privileged white guys who, a bit of banter, don't really believe in kind of
Yeah,
like the stuff that affects minorities and vulnerable people and things like that. Or maybe they kind of recognize that these things probably
yeah,
happen, but they're kind of not their problem. They're just going to
yeah.
get on with, I'm all right, so I'm just going to have fun and
Quite
I'm not really going to think about.
entitled.
Yeah,
Sort of like
exactly.
upon being saved, there's not very much
Oh, yeah,
like
I know.
gratitude or thanks.
Yeah.
Sort of comes along, takes all of the cat's resources, all the
Mm,
fish, leaving none
yeah.
for the rest of the pack. Yeah,
No,
I don't
that's
know.
right. And there's obviously that sort of debate. It's the classic kind of post-apocalyptic film situation that we have discussed every time since like The Last of Us. Do you stop to help when other people are in danger? So Joel does not stop that car to help the family on the road when they're trying to escape the city at the beginning of The Last of Us. But after some debate, the animals do
Yeah,
steer
and
the boat
in a
over.
unanimous decision, to be
Yeah,
fair.
I think so. I mean, it's the capybara, I think, who is kind of leading the desire
Yeah, the
to
capybaras.
stop, and
Yeah.
the Labrador, obviously, retriever. I think it's golden retriever, but then Wikipedia says it's Labrador. So anyway, for the capybara, he seems to be the one who is generous in terms of helping others. The retriever, it's his kind, I guess, his group that he wants to go and save. The cat, I feel kind of like a little bit sort of mixed, maybe, sort of sits on the side of the boat listening, kind of implying that it's okay to go, but showing wariness.
Mm.
And the secretary bird is obviously like in charge at that point, and I think has reservations, but sort of gives into the democratic animal vote. I mean, it's amazing that we can even like sort of discuss this, consider these just animated animals that don't say anything. But I think so yeah, basically sort of this idea that like, are people decent overall, knowing that the dogs are going to be a nightmare, that they've been a pain all the way through. They're not going to show any gratitude. They're not going to bring anything to the
Yeah, they're not going to
group.
return the favor
No.
if, the situation was the other way
Um,
around.
but it would be wrong to leave them stranded on their bit of pavement under a pagoda or something in the middle of the water. So
Yeah, quite
that's
ethical
nice.
animals, to be
Yeah,
fair.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But I think by that point in the narrative, they're starting to see the importance of like, I guess, working together and helping each other.
Yeah.
So I guess that the Labrador Retriever has a that sort of split between his kind and the people that he's actually sort of become friends with. I liked the fact that he finds joy in unexpected places or typical places for a dog, perhaps, but like
Yeah.
in a time when like everything is really bad, he still finds joy. Sort of like maybe shown to be a little bit stupid, but also just like wanting to be friends. These are good
Yeah,
things, good qualities.
wanting to
Yeah.
play, wanting to
Yeah.
interact,
Copying the cat.
sort of mirroring.
Maybe that's something again about like how people cohere into groups, like the way in
Yeah,
which they kind of like
like
mimic each other's
integrating.
behaviors.
Yeah, yeah.
Cat in turn becomes a little bit more playful and joyous, doing the
Yes, yeah.
classic, I can see a tail hanging down, I'm going to biff it with my paw. So
Oh, I really enjoyed the little moment where the lemur was like pulling things out of its little basket of items and materials, and there was the classic gonna put something on the side, and the cat comes along and is
so
like,
I know, just
absolutely
like
not, pushing this off
just
the
I'm just
end.
gonna hit this because it is there. Knock it off. This is so cheap. We've talked a little bit about the capybara and his sort of friendliness, but I was also thinking that in many ways the capybara is the one that has the most and yet offers to share it with no expectation of reward. Because I mean, capybaras are really good swimmers, right? We see that. So in a way, he's the safest of certainly the non-flying animals. He has the boat, however that occurred.
Mhm.
He easily gets food. He grabs some bananas again. Where are we? Who knows? But there are passing banana plants, and the capybara seems very kind of content in isolation, but also then like welcomes all of these others and recognizes their particular needs. So I thought also capybara is very calm overall, despite the sort of desperate situations. He's quite impressive from, I don't know why. I really didn't feel that these animals were masculine when watching the film, except possibly the dogs.
No.
Or and now
Yes.
I'm defaulting to he him pronouns in spite of thinking about them all gender neutral when I was preparing this. This is the patriarchy defaulting to masculine
We're all
pronouns.
susceptible to it.
It's so true.
Um,
But yeah, so capybara, cool, but willing to share, willing to give, not expecting return, likes to just flop down for a nap all the time.
yep.
I like that vibe a lot.
Unbothered, well
Yeah,
fed, well
yeah,
watered,
yeah.
well rested. It's kind of how we all want to be, yeah.
But does care about others, even if they
Yeah.
think that the others are like not very like don't have much to offer. I know the cat is really mean to the capybara when they first meet, and the lemur is way more interested in gathering their stuff up than anything else. But the capybara just gives them a hand, and then yeah, I liked that scene with the like lemur and their
Yeah,
stuff.
there was definitely like a sense of urgency. I was like, that was one of the points where I like felt quite a lot of anxiety as the water levels kept rising.
Mm.
Yeah, and also like was like one point where the cat falls off the top of the, I guess the mast,
Mm.
sort of passing out on the deck of the boat, and the capybara like gently nudges it into, I guess, under coverage.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, definitely a bit of like the leader, the caretaker of the group.
And it is that sort of care because it's the right thing to do, not care because the cat would do the same thing for the
Yeah,
capybara.
yeah.
Uh, you know, and
It's
the
not, yeah.
lemur is, we might, as you say, with that tension, you're just like, leave everything behind and get in the boat, you
Yes.
stupid animal. Uh, but the capybara kind of recognizes that the best way to get the lemur to help itself is to help get the basket onto the boat as well. Yeah, just like the capybara as a person.
Yes.
The lemur, however, whilst very cute and ultimately does do the right thing at the end of the film, is like what the vain one, the
Yeah.
one that's just interested in like being a consumer of random shiny stuff.
Yeah. Very much like self-interested.
In some ways, I get it because ring-tailed lemurs have the finest tail among all
They
animals.
do.
And the answer to the crucial question that one should ask on things like first dates, which is if you were an animal, what kind of tail would you have? The correct answer is a ring-tailed lemur
Ring-tailed,
tail. Yeah.
ring-tailed
So,
lemur tail.
I get the vanity. If I had such a tail, I would probably
Yes.
feel the same. Um,
It explains all of the sort of staring into the mirror and
mm,
admiring its own
yeah,
reflection.
yeah.
Um,
Obviously, like some of the stuff turns out to have kind of like a bit of a purpose, like
mhm.
the float, which is of course a glass float that we sort of think originates from the house that the cat came from, because I think they're hanging up there.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that that float has been carried by the lemur and then ends up floating where the cat can survive on it, at the end, it does actually serve a purpose. But most of the stuff is just stuff. They don't really use it for anything very much other than to put into the basket, and the basket falls
Yes.
over and they take it out and put it in.
At least we're
Um,
keeping the deck nice and cleanly. Everything's organized.
I
You
have to
know.
say, yeah, it was
Mm.
a surprisingly clean um
Yes.
boat. I
No,
suspect that in
indeed.
reality that probably would not be the case. Short of I think one fur ball which the cat coughed up, all seem very clean. But then of course the lemur is looking for other lemurs, and when it finds the other lemurs, it's just it's horrible. They're like the mean
Yeah.
girl lemurs. They're like won't let our lemur on the boat or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I don't know. I guess there was like a little bit of interest there. There was like, the mirror got brought out and
Hmm.
sort of eyebrows were raised and
Hmm.
human eyebrows and tails were
Hmm.
fluffed. And they did go check it out. But I guess there's also an element of like being scared off by the other
Yeah,
animals on the
that's
boat.
true.
That yeah, sort of like maybe there's kind of alienation from both
Mm.
sides of the R lemur and the lemur group and
Mm.
the sort of crown clad
Mm.
lemur group.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that there's probably something about like our lemurs kind of real friends, as it were, sort of trying to remind our lemur that you don't need those other lemurs just because, they are like they don't have the qualities that you need in your friends, because those lemurs obviously haven't helped anyone else, haven't like tried to assist in any way. They've just gathered up all the random crowns that they could find and are wearing them. Um, uh,
The most important things you need to survive the apocalypse.
yeah, exactly. So maybe what they're in a way kind of like represent the wealthy and all the trappings of like of wealth, of having stuff, of like status and things like that.
Mm.
And our lemur has a mirror, which is obviously a good thing, but that's all the interaction is based on, like how much stuff do you have, and that sort of thing. And obviously, eventually, I think understandably, our lemur wants to return to their own people, but also when the cat arrives, breaks away and
Mm.
does the little reunion at the end, and
Yeah.
leads the plan to save the boat. So that's all good.
I think there's also
Um,
maybe a little bit of a message of like there's benefit to having a diverse like interspecies
mm,
group on your boat rather than just like I guess a one sort of homogenous uh
okay, so yes, I
group of
agree. So
people.
this is like
Mm.
multiculturalism in
Yeah,
action.
yeah. Sort
Um,
of like everyone has their own kind of strengths.
mm.
And even people who don't necessarily always contribute are worth saving or can
Harking back
contribute.
to our discussion
Yeah,
of meritocracy, that you don't need to have
exactly.
something to give to be worth looking after and keeping alive. So yeah, no, that's good. I like that. And yeah, the lemur, obviously being a lemur, has certain advantages like opposable thumbs. I guess lemurs have opposable thumbs. They can do things with their little hands anyway.
They can, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so those are advantages. And then we get into the weird ones while we're going through our characters.
Yes.
So, okay. Secretary bird, which I had to look up
Secretary
that this
bird.
was the secretary bird. Not so hot on the birds, pretty good on mammals. Um,
Yes. I was saying to Claire before we started filming, I was like, I did not even think this was a real bird. It looks quite I don't know, yeah. I don't think I'd ever heard of secretary
but
bird before this
there's
film.
so many birds like that you find out, like you see them and you're just like, that
Yeah,
look at that's ridiculous. And then it turns
yeah.
out that it's actually a thing.
Avians are an interesting group of animals.
Yeah.
Um
Little dinosaurs. So, I mean, the secretary birds pose an actual threat to the
Mhm.
cat. I haven't looked up what secretary birds eat, have you?
Ooh, let's have a little quick look right now.
Secretary bird.
Secretary bird.
They can kill snakes. That's the first thing I've
Sounds
learnt.
like they could kill a cat,
Bird of
if you
prey.
ask me.
Yeah.
Small
Um,
mammals, insects, reptiles, amphibians. Okay, maybe not quite cat size, but our cat is quite small, so
yeah,
mm.
absolutely. And the birds, yeah, I mean, they are like over a
The
meter
bird, I
tall.
think, could probably break one of their fellow bird bones. Like that
Mm.
was, it was quite
That
an
was not nice, was it?
organized,
Yeah.
yeah, punishment there, yeah.
Just especially given the kind of like the lack of reason behind the sort of altercation was all very extreme.
Yeah, I guess the cat was being chased as a result of like, there were the sort of little baby secretary birds, kind of
Mm.
a lot of like
Yeah.
motherly protection,
Yeah.
like parental protection,
Hmm.
and aggression with that. So I kind of see why, but I wonder what the sort of our main secretary bird that
Mm.
decided to protect the cat. I guess what was the benefit or the
Yeah.
are we just kind of going back to the
Hmm.
same concept of like everyone deserves to be protected, but even at the risk of
Yeah.
your own extradition from your
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. I mean, I think that it's again, this is one of the ways in which I suppose we're looking at light anthropomorphizing of our animals.
Mm,
Um, because obviously we do see altruism among intelligent animals, that's true, but a lot of, as you say, animal behavior is based on instinct, for example, preserving
and
the
just
young and
like,
so on.
yeah, maintaining
Um,
survival,
yeah.
all of those things. Yeah.
Um, but what we see, I guess, in our secretary bird is a an altruistic act, giving the cat the fish simply because the cat is in need of feeding. So it's an act of charity, essentially. And then continuing to stand up in the face of the vulnerable. I mean, the cat obviously was taken by a secretary bird and then dropped from a great height. So the danger is apparent. It's not hypothetical. This is an animal that is at risk, I guess. And I wondered, I mentioned before, the sort of symbolism of a black cat, but there was surely something noticeable about this idea of the more powerful, privileged white creature standing up to prevent the persecution of the smaller, more vulnerable black minority cat. There was something there I thought about like allyship and about recognizing how you can use your privilege, but also recognizing that that can be costly, I guess,
Yes.
because our secretary bird, as we said, gets into a fight and loses and gets a broken wing and then is abandoned by his peers.
No.
So that's not good. But also, then of course, he finds again, masculinized our secretary bird, and I have no idea whether there's a difference between
I
male and
actually
female
considered
secretary
the
birds.
bird a female bird. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah,
Seemed
yeah.
quite motherly at first,
Yeah,
maybe in
mate.
the
Yeah,
feeding of the
yeah,
not
yeah.
that, feeding and looking after and being protective should just be a motherly trait, but
No,
um
but I get what you mean. Yeah, I don't know whether there's a difference in appearance. It's obviously it's quite typical between birds, isn't it? Like a different appearance for a male and a female, but they all looked the same
mhm.
except for the babies, which were like greyer. So our secretary bird, they take on this role in the boat with their newfound people, which is I think one of the more interesting, harder to pin down kind of what is going on with the secretary bird. You made some really good notes, kind of looking at their different characteristics and roles symbolically once they're kind of part of the group.
I don't know, a couple of musings on the internet sort of suggested this bird as more of like a spiritual symbol as
Mm,
well. I guess through a Western lens could be seen as
mm,
like kind of a Jesus figure, as
mm,
like protector, rescuing the cat from drowning, and I guess sort of targeting by the other birds.
mm,
Its kindness was, like sacrifices were made for its
mm,
kindness, and also there was
mm,
suffering in there as well.
mm,
Also kind of exists as a nourisher, kind of like
mm,
feeding the cat, and as a leader, steering the boat, looked up to by the other animals.
mm,
And I guess going back to the kind of moral test, I get like with the whether to save the group of dogs or not.
mm,
The secretary bird sort of like I don't know, some people interpreted it as kind of waiting on the unanimous agreement of the rest of
Mm.
the crew, the boat on the boat crew
Mm.
before kind of giving up its place at the kind of rudder of the
Helm,
boat.
the rudder.
Helm,
Yes.
that's the one.
Yeah, helm. I was in.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just, I should know that
Mm.
really. I've got level one sailing
I was going to
certification back
say
in the
I
day.
have. I have.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was going to say I've seen you on a boat, but in fact I have seen you over a very bad internet connection on a boat once many years ago. But
Yeah, that was
mm.
very yeah. Well, yeah, Claire managed to participate in my
So
through an online means
virtual
of a
sailing trip.
voyage. Yeah, virtual voyage.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we also see towards the end of the film the bird death scene.
Mm.
It's all,
Yeah.
I guess, how did you interpret that? There's a sort of the celestial ascension,
Yeah.
rising. There's no body.
No.
Also, kind of some sort of, again,
Um,
Western lens, Christ-like kind of.
yeah, obviously it
Um,
mirrors the idea of the ascension and especially the
yes.
idea of kind of like the cat as a witness and so on. I was thinking about the sort of narrative biographical traditions behind stories of apotheosis that predate the New Testament account of the ascension. So this narrative pattern is one that exists not only in Greco-Roman pagan gods, the idea of dying and rising and that sort of thing, resurrection, but also the idea of, I guess, rising to godhood, apotheosis.
Hmm.
It's the technical term, is something that's described with respect, for example, to the figures of the Roman emperors, starting with the dictator Julius Caesar and then following on with the Caesars to the extent that it becomes kind of just a trope. This is what happens, like when an emperor dies. So this idea, yeah, I guess the bodily resurrection, it becomes doctrinal with respect to Mary, the mother of Christ, as well. The idea of her being lifted immaculately into heaven. So there's a number of kind of spiritual traditions in the Western canon and the Western Church. I suspect that there may well be traditions in other religions because I think it's one of those sort of fundamental story elements. But yeah, the secretary bird we assume dies because I think that's what we understand when we see a creature being taken up into heaven, because that, or the sky, perhaps I should say, especially up into the aurora, which is again the aurora borealis or australis. We don't know because we don't know where we are, but like the up into the stars, the idea of kind of like becoming part of the stars again is like imagery often associated with life after death, I suppose. But the very fact, as you say, that it's like a bodily resurrection, no, bodily ascension is associated more with like, yeah, the not what normally happens to people when they die.
Yes.
So it sort of suggests that this is a figure of spiritual importance or a god, I guess, a divine significance.
It seems a bit out of place
Yeah, it's sort
in
of more
the
mystical
film.
than like anything else that
Yeah.
happens in. So quite what we're supposed to.
Interpret that like in the wider, I
Mm,
guess, scheme of the
yeah.
film. And
I mean, I
I don't
suppose if you
know.
do apply a sort of religious leader kind of connotation to it, it sort of suggests that the behavior that the secretary bird models, as you mentioned, protection and sacrifice, nourishment, leadership, I guess leading to make good moral decisions and things like that, are ideal qualities associated with the divine or with religious morality, those kinds of things. You might see those as a sort of like the, let's say, the secretary bird as sort of symbolizing that. And if you do take the idea, I suppose, of secretary bird Jesus, then there is the Jesus as human, and therefore the secretary bird as secretary bird, and Jesus simultaneously as the incarnate God, and therefore eligible, as it were, for bodily ascension in the New Testament narrative. So, is there something, I guess, about the secretary bird is a real secretary bird, but also has this kind of like other element to its ontology? I don't know. I'm quite sure that people will write about this the same way as like Neo in the Matrix was Jesus, and so on and so forth. Aslan Jesus, and now Secretary Bird Jesus. So That's me excommunicated. It's,
I guess like another
um,
great figure is the whale.
okay,
Um,
yeah. So that's also kind of a bit weird, right? The whale. I don't
yes,
know.
yes. Well, this is now a sort of whale catfish Leviathan
Leviathan, I think we usually say. I don't,
Leviathan. That's the one.
yeah, anglicized.
Um, yes. I don't know. It's sort of not quite a real
Mm.
animal that exists. Sort of mythological.
Like its
Yeah.
movement, its animated movement is very whale-like, like with the tail and the way it
Yes.
rises out of the water. But it has all these like tentacly bits,
Kind of.
like well, I don't know much about fish, but like it makes me think of catfish because they have the whiskly
Yes.
bits.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um.
everybody, because this is an audio format, missed my catfish impersonation there, which I think was, a sad loss. But obviously, like it's really, really big. Like it's much bigger than anything else, any other
Mm.
animal, much bigger than the boat. And so it could only be like swimming among these buildings because of the fact that we've had this massive flood. So, like, whale is good, bad, indifferent. I mean,
Neutral, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes provides a bit of help, saves the cat once or time,
mm,
once or two times, sort
mm.
of accidentally slash intentionally helps the group free the boat that got caught in a
Caught in the
tree.
tree, yeah, we don't know
Um,
because was it just a whale being a whale, like happening to sort of slosh
yeah,
down right next to their boat?
was the
It,
whale sort of actively trailing the boat and,
mm,
sort of as a sort of parallel traveler?
yeah,
Um, always kind of coming up in the journey when most needed, sort of maybe a kind of
yeah,
guardian as well, kind of
yeah,
guardian
yeah.
figure.
Or as you say, is it just kind of chance? Is this a whale? Because we don't know what it's like a mythical whale. Is it a plankton eating whale, or was it actually intending to try and like eat the cat? I mean, these are questions, but the whale also shows like elements of joy, I think. It's a difficult one to if we're trying to make a concrete metaphor, because we sort of want to say apocalyptic flood bad, and yet we're reminded that, of course, I guess nature changes, things change, some people will benefit, and then we think, oh, well, that's evil. The whale must be evil if it's benefiting from the terrible impacts on the planet. This is like Donald Trump saying, oh, well, we'll have more seaside condos if, sea levels rise or whatever. But the whale, as you say, is either neutral or possibly a sort of guardian figure. So this is where I think we really get into dangerous ground if we try and like allegorize this film because it doesn't
Mm.
really lend itself to it. Especially because when the water goes down, we
Yeah, the
suddenly remember there was a
I don't you don't
whale.
s- there's no fish though. Where did the rest of the fish, did they get swept up with the water? I'm not sure. I
I guess
don't
so. I
know.
mean, fish don't tend to get beached as much as whales do, I
That's
guess.
true.
So
That is
it may
true.
just be that.
Yeah. The whale is stranded after
Mm,
the water recesses,
mm,
and
mm,
after the saving of the rest of the animals on the boat, the sort of team effort, the cat goes to find this whale,
mm,
and yeah, I guess kind of offers the whale solace in its final
mm.
moments. Yeah, offers
Yeah.
it some comfort and
Yeah, I
pity.
think it's a sort of moment where you're slightly sort of helpless because you think
Mm,
this cat can do nothing, but actually there's something, I guess, about being with others in their suffering, not leaving people to die alone, which is
yeah,
symbolized by the cat doing the whole cat chin rub thing that
yeah, and the
cats
purr.
do. Yeah. And a peaceful ending, it seems, for the whale, which we can come back to because we should talk about the denouement, as you mentioned, which is that before the very sad scene with the whale, there is the saving the day scene with the
Yes.
boat. Once the cat has once again survived terrible near drowning experience
Yeah.
with occasional head up meow sounds that just
Yeah.
broke my heart. I know they say
Oh,
that cats make meow sounds because they've learned to like mimic
yeah.
human
It's just like
babies or whatever. But
domestication. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But
but
also, I can believe that it's also can be used communicate with other species of animals, like
I
other
I get that. I
non-cat.
mean, I'm not much interested in babies, but I was very keen to save that cat every time it went meow, meow. It's just
Oh.
like, oh, it's like every time my cats do that, and I'll be like, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And usually it's you haven't given us enough food. It's the wrong sort of food. Why is it raining? These are the usual messages, but I felt very bad. But yeah, so for everybody else, the boat has washed up as the water recedes and is now hanging in the branches of a tree over a gorge.
Yes, I feel like this is like the poignant moment in the film where we
Mm.
kind of see how each of the characters like have come far and like how
Mm.
that I guess how the experience that they went through has like changed them. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think they like really well illustrate that. I think the dog, the especially with the dog pack,
they have not developed
they have not
mostly.
developed, but the golden retriever has broken out of the pack mentality
That's right.
and
He has.
has decided to focus on the more important thing, which is saving its friend or its
Yeah,
friends. And the cat has become an active participant rather than a
yeah,
passive participant
yeah.
in saving the capybara and the dog and the
Even in
lemur
the face of putting itself in
itself in
danger.
danger.
So
Yeah.
falls off that branch and is only saved by very speedy rodent teeth going
Yeah.
back of the
That
neck. I mean, it's
capybara, man.
yeah, I know. I know. Lucky it has those reflexes, really.
Yeah.
So Cap takes risks. The dog ignores its own, I guess, instinct to be part of the group think. The lemur steps up into a kind of hands-on leadership role, in terms of like telling everyone what they've got to do as they all speedily learn physics and how to bring the boat to shore. But I guess it's a reminder that this capybara, who has been in an advantageous position throughout the film, really, is now the one that is in danger because, unlike the other animals, it hasn't got the capacity to jump from the boat to the ground. So there's something about situations can change. People can change from positions of like privilege to not. And so they will still need help. So yeah, so that's kind of I guess our arc, and it's about like, working together, becoming the best that you can be, not necessarily following what other people like you or who you think are like you do, diversity, giving without expectation of receiving, things like that, I guess. And then there is what happens to the whale. So there's a
Yeah.
post-credit scene. Anybody who was thinking of turning off and not watching
Somehow,
from
yeah. Both me and Claire missed this post-credit scene, but
I
we read
know.
about it in our flow musings.
Mm,
Yeah. So in the scene, it cuts to the whale swimming through water, which some people think is just an opportunity for the animation crew to show off their insane water visuals.
yeah.
Um, but some people interpret it as the flooding came back,
Mm,
all of our land roamers may have drowned, and
mm.
the whale lives on. But I don't know. How do you interpret that, Claire?
I don't know. Suppose I wanted to see it as sort of whale heaven,
Yeah.
so that I felt better about the sad death of the whale. But I don't know. There is, yeah, as you say, there's when we were doing Snowpiercer at the end, and it was like, and now the polar bears will thrive by eating the dead people. There is a bit that's like, well, now comes the time of the waterborne creatures, water-dwelling creatures, and they will live happily on. But of course, it's not that simple because there's an ecosystem there. For example, like whales that eat seals, and seals
Mm.
give birth on land, and it is a complex question that doesn't. It isn't simply that the whale will inherit the earth, I think, but who knows? Let us know your thoughts
Yes.
about the ending. Or maybe we should not try and apply any meaning to it at all
No,
and just
exactly.
enjoy the
It'd
whale.
just be a beautiful visual
Mm,
little clip at the
yeah,
end there, and
yeah.
an alternative ending for the whale where it lives
Mm.
on. He knew a film about a cat in a flood could be so heavy.
I know, I know. I was really uncertain that we were going to be able to talk about this for like a normal length of time, but I suppose the sort of final thing for me to take away from this was like that yeah, okay, it can raise lots of images. It can encourage us to reflect on certain things to do with the climate crisis and how we live with one another. But it is also just valuable as I guess, a beautiful work of art. And that can't be said of all the things that we talk about. A lot of them, some of them will be beautiful in their way, but a lot of them it's all about the sort of clear meaning and the characters and story. But this, I think, you can also just let it wash over you and not just enjoy it like that, I guess, for its own sake, which is obviously not a reason to listen to this entire podcast episode. So we should save this revelation for the very end. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything that you sort of took away from it?
I think yeah, it's about maybe for me just like banding together with
Mm,
like how banding together with like unlikely people can
mm,
help your survival and overcoming situations. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's kind of like the root of the film.
mm,
But yeah. And I guess saving people just for the sake of it being the ethical
mm.
thing to do rather than
Yeah,
expecting a return on it. Um,
yeah,
but most of the time, helping people does give you a return on something.
yeah.
Um,
Would be more like the capybara, who generally was just happy to be there with the helpful boat and the provision of bananas. Well, let us know anyway what you think in your entire interpretation of this. It's different from ours. You can do that by visiting our website, which is Dystopian Fiction Has Been Moved to Current Affairs, or by going to our Instagram, Dystopian Fiction Current Affairs, or Blue Sky, or Substack, or whatever. Google us, find us, let us know, send us an essay. That would be lovely. Uh, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with The House of Dynamite.
House of Dynamite
Did I check that
on
that is actually what
Netflix.
it's called? I'm pretty sure that's
And
what it is.
let's have a little look.
A House of Dynamite. I take it back. A House of
Fantastic.
Dynamite, which is on Netflix. And according to this headline, A House of Dynamite is both political fantasy and major disappointment. That's good, isn't it? I thought it was really interesting
Okay,
reflection on nuclear
you're
armaments.
making me
So
very excited to watch it, Claire.
yeah, exactly.
This concept sounds great when you were explaining it to
No,
me. So
I thought it was much better than this Guardian review is
okay,
letting on. So, um,
fair enough. We can
and
make our own opinions.
yeah, exactly. And following that, we will be doing Solaris. So, if you want to get ahead in terms of catching up with us, then obviously you need to read Solaris and you need to watch the longest ever film in Russian. And then you can finish off by enjoying a bit of George Clooney in his youth with the American version. So something for everybody there,
Something for
surely.
everyone. Yes.
Cool. So I think, is that everything?
I think that is everything. Yes.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you very much, Marsha.
Thank you very much, Claire.
And thank you, listeners. We will see you soon.
Bye bye.